Hello, so good to see you guys.
For those who are just joining, if you want to join us with video, click raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. We'll be super happy to see you, like we were seeing others.
Yeah, because one of the things that we try to accomplish in these webinars is to dispel the misunderstanding, because we want physical distancing, not social distancing. We want social integration instead of so by the formula of our webinar is a little bit different. That we like to see people. We want to see how many people there are and joining us from different parts of the world. We see UK over there. So it's 7 p.m. in London, isn't it? Okay, so we are spanning from 9 p.m. in Finland to 11 a.m. Here in California.
Okay.
And we have 8 p.m. in Poland, don't we?
Yes, it's just 8 p.m. almost o'clock here in Poland. So if anyone else wants to join,
Houston. Oh, wonderful.
If anyone else wants to join us with camera, the group of panelists, ask the questions live or later, be included in the post-webinar session, please use raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen. It's also perfectly good just to be on the receiving part. And welcome again, Mariusz. And I think it's good to kick it off.
Oh, so welcome and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So good to see you. And so today we have a great privilege of having a world expert on behavioral change, Dr. Piliviki Absetz from Finland, and we had that is such a great pleasure to have you with us today. And also I wanted to thank Dr. Andrew Janczyk for hosting this and making sure that technology works, because
hopefully works.
okay. And so thank you very much for joining us, and thanks to Prosoma for providing all the technical aspects of that. And thank you for Alexandra down there from the UK. Alexandra joined us like on the second webinar or so, to help us address certain things also in the UK regarding the pandemic. Hello? Oh, we don't hear you anyway. So, but it is nice to see that you are talking. So yes, so we were, and also in the title of our webinars, the series. Can you imagine it is already the 9th webinar that we are doing? So we started March the 22nd, and the origin of it was to help people deal with the COVID pandemic. See, I was flooded with a lot of questions from patients, their families, my colleagues and coworkers, how to deal with it, and I simply could not feel it. So I decided to, let me do one webinar so people will have some tools. And then, okay, I was talking to doing the second, and Andrew and Alexandra started helping me with these webinars, and then Alexandra created the Facebook group. So thank you very much. And Andrew, I don't know who even did what, but we have a Facebook community too. And we've been growing incredibly. So, and we've been using the ABCD model of our emotions. A is activating event, B is our thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes that actually cause us to feel emotions. In C, and D was doing. So that is the ABC, the cognitive behavioral model of our emotions and actions. And today, we will be focusing on the D. And Dr. Absetz will be talking about the behavioral change, how we can change our behavior and our actions. And that in turn may change what we think about ourselves, how efficacious we are, and also how we feel about ourselves. So that is a great example, and she's also going to, I'm not going to talk about her presentation, but I got so excited about it. So yes, so that, and we'll do a new format, because, so we will play the recorded lecture, but Dr. Absetz is here live, so as you can see. She can wave to you guys, so she's going to be live and answering the questions. But we wanted to make sure, spanning different continents, we wanted to make sure that everything works out. So pre-recorded the presentation seemed like a good idea. So is there anything that you guys would like to add before we do the first poll?
I would like to thank again Pilviki for joining us. I'm also very excited to hearing this lecture. So thank you once again.
Yeah, and thank you so much for inviting me to this webinar. And I'm extremely excited and happy to be here. And I'm sorry that I'm not talking live. One of the main reasons for that is my two dogs. Now they are sleeping, but if I start to give a lecture, I'm sure that they would start barking, and barking a lot for a long time. So those kinds of interruptions are not nice and make me a little bit nervous also. So then we decided to do a pre-recorded talk. But I hope that that you are not bothered by that, and I'm live here to discuss with you after the talk and after the polls that we have. So happy to be here. Thank you.
We are happy too.
So how it's gonna look like? So for the first hour of our webinar, we're gonna have the lecture. Of course, Pilviki, Dr. Absetz is gonna answer the questions live. That the questions are gonna be, you can ask the questions in chat, or you can use the Q&A.
We prefer Q&A because chat disappears really quickly. So
it's
we
easier
would prefer
to practice.
So questions in Q&A, and please, comments you can put in chat, so that would be great. And when you do comments, just click on all panelists and attendees, so this way everybody sees it. Of course, unless you want some private message sent to someone. So we didn't hear you, Alexander. I don't know what's going on with your audio. So and we still hope to hear Pilviki's dogs anyway. So we will pause the presentation because we will be asking you questions too, and we will be collecting polls. So without further ado, we will go to the first poll. So how many of our webinars have you seen so far, live or on YouTube? So we'll ask you to.
Okay. I think most of people already answered. So I'm going to share the results.
Yeah, so we have significant number, 35% of people who are joining here for you for the first time. So you are a big draw for our audience. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you, everybody.
And we see here, wonderful. We see, I'm at 33%, so 4 to 7 of them, so that is great too. So thank you very much for answering.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so yeah, so let's start the presentation then.
What about your marine
Your
slide?
slide.
Oh yes, thank you very much, Pilviki. You see, we were discussing how to present something, and thank you very much. You know, I'm so excited. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is that behavioral change is inherently difficult, and many of you were able to lose weight, but keeping it off is a challenge. So, and also we need to understand that really the system is rigged against us. So the system, the cards are stacked against us, unfortunately. First of all, it's our biology, and our genetics. We are built to eat fatty, sweet, salty foods, and those things, we are wired to really like them and crave them. Second part is that we are also wired, as you can see on the left side, there is the couch, and we really like resting and doing nothing, really. Or even mindlessly watching TV. And we have even remote and even chips on the couch. So, and then there is, as you can see on the left upper corner, there are a lot of people who are paid big money, and also they make big money to get us to keep consuming all those unhealthy things and keep watching the movies. And there are a lot of other temptations that to keep us where we are. So it is like us running up the escalator, but this escalator is moving in the opposite direction. And what is also important to understand, that this escalator is accelerating. So the amount of money spent on the unhealthy foods and so on is simply incredible. And also the legal battles that companies, like for example Oatly, by trying to introduce to the market things that are not animal based, are really facing also legal challenges by and so on. So that is really incredible how much money and talent, because you see these people who try to keep us consuming and staying on the couches have a lot of money to spend and recruit the best talent to actually keep us from engaging in a healthy lifestyle. And particularly the beginning is really hard. So first of all, we wanted to validate the situation and not playing like, oh, the lifestyle is so easy. So thank you very much for reminding me about this, Pilviki. So we will, any comments people have about that? So you can put in chat or. Okay, so we could go into the presentation.
And
I'm so
please
glad
let me
I don't
know.
need to.
Please let me know if you hear the audio. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here today with you and grateful to Dr. Virga for his kind invitation to come and speak with you. My name is Pilviki Absetz. I'm a psychologist by background. I did my doctorate degree evaluating the psychological impact of cancer screening some 20 years ago. I've understood that many of you have experience with cancer, either personally or through a family member. And I shared the latter with you. I've learned that every person has their unique way of reacting to the illness experience. Another thing we share is interest to healthy lifestyle and how to achieve it. After my doctorate degree, I've studied behavior change and developed programs to support lifestyle change and self-management of chronic diseases, both in Finland, where I live, and in other countries. Often my research projects have taken me to places in low and middle income countries where resources for medical care and even for self-management support by health professionals are limited, and much more emphasis has to be put on what people can do by themselves and together with their peers. Also today, when I talk about the easier way to lifestyle change, my focus is on what we can do ourselves for our health and well-being. I think this is especially timely now when, due to the pandemic, we all face many challenges. For some of us, the virus itself is threatening. For others, stress and worry about the health of a loved one or the restrictions are causing more stress. Maybe we feel that we are not free to do the things we would otherwise be doing, and it's harder to lead a healthy lifestyle when you do not have access to gym, you have to rethink shopping and how to feed your family, and you might be isolated from your friends and family. On top of it, some of us might be facing financial problems. Before I start my presentation, I want to set the stage. As I said, I'm based in Helsinki, which is the capital city of Finland, which is one of the Nordic countries, squeezed between Russia and Sweden. I have to introduce my two companions here today. They are my dogs, Nilo and Peppi. You might hear them walking around and even barking during the live discussion session after the talk. I want to apologize for that already now. This picture I took on our evening walk a couple of days ago. At 9 o'clock, the sun was about to set and made the forest look enchanted. If you ever come to Finland, come in the early summer. In this talk, I will address the following issues. First, what do we mean when we talk about lifestyle change, and how big does the change have to be to count as a real change? Then we'll talk about theories of change with the idea that everyone has their own theories, although often we don't even recognize them. I believe it's important to identify our implicit theories and see if they actually fit with our realities and whether they can support us or not. And then, if necessary, change the theory for a better one. I will present a theory that I've found useful, which entails identifying existing healthy behaviors and using those as building blocks for change. One of my favorite topics is changes that do not require huge motivation and effort, and that can still become long-lasting. This is also one of the most important parts of my talk. I will then revisit the question of big change, because that is when motivation especially needs to be discussed. While I think the role of motivation is overrated in change, I do acknowledge that sometimes it is needed and there are ways to boost it, so we'll discuss those. Lastly, I hope to wrap up the talk with some practical take-home messages that will help and support you in leading healthier and happier lives during and after the pandemic. So when I say lifestyle and lifestyle change, I want you to think about what it means to you. For many of us, it's about opposites. There's the bad, unhealthy lifestyle that we need to change. It's the fast food with fat, salt, and sugar. We should stop eating what we are eating, and we should do it all now. And we should start with the completely new kind of diet that changes all our habits from shopping to cooking to preferences in taste, smell, and texture. Not to mention how the food looks. On the market, there are many different kinds of diets neatly packaged and labeled like paleo, Mediterranean, blood type, low carb, etc. But they all follow the same principle of big change. The same logic applies to physical activity or inactivity. Forget the comfortable, lazy days and start a new life, and do it now. For many of us, lifestyle change means really, really big changes. The measure of these changes is often how you look or how your life looks from the outside. So many people are ready to start this kind of change that it has become a multi-billion-dollar business. Despite the fact that the big changes require so many restrictions, denial, and heroic self-discipline, and full focus on what you eat, drink, and how you exercise and what else you do, that it will take you 24/7, as you will be fighting against what your body tells you, what your habits tell you, and what your environment tells you. And still, most of us fail in this type of change. This is from a study a couple of years back when researchers followed 14 out of the 16 contestants of The Biggest Loser show. And what they found was that not only did most of them regain what they had lost, but managing their weight had become much more difficult as their metabolic rate has slowed down significantly during the competition. Of course, the industry was not happy about the findings, and this study has been severely criticized. For some people, change has to be big, otherwise it does not feel really right. It seems like it is not change at all if you do not notice it quickly. However, if we think of ourselves and how we've changed during our lives, we probably agree that each of us has changed a lot, but the change has been so gradual that we cannot really pinpoint when and where much of it happened. So there have been many small changes that we've integrated into our lives. For most of us, there have been some big changes and many more small changes that have all contributed to who we are. Now, let's take our first poll. So, I want to ask you, what is your personal measure for lifestyle change? Is it a major change, such as losing a lot of weight or practicing for a marathon? Or is it taking up a new diet or exercise routine? Or do even small daily behavior changes that have become habitual count as change for you?
Okay, so let's pause it for the poll answers to come in. Okay, we still have some answers coming in, so.
And I can read the comment that James Cook made. Life is a cinch by the inch. It is hard by the yard. That is a great comment. Thank you. Oh, wow. That is great to see that people are appreciative of even small changes. What do you think, Vicky?
Yeah, I'm very happy to see this result, and I think that it's great we are on the same page on this.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Let's continue with the presentation then.
Thinking of behavior changes, it's useful to make a distinction between 4 different types of change. The first is to stop doing what you do now. The second is to start doing something new. You probably already recognize that these are usually the big changes. The third type is a more moderate version of the stop, and it is to do less what you are doing now. And the last one you might already guess. Yes, it's doing more of what you are already doing now or have done before. When I say less or more, I mean in terms of how frequently or how much you do it. And these types of changes are typically much smaller. Another feature of these 4 types is whether they look at changes as negative, meaning reducing something, or positive, meaning adding something. I bet you can already now see what I'm suggesting when I'm talking about an easier way to change. Let's talk about our theories of lifestyle change a bit. I've worked a lot with healthcare professionals who counsel their patients in making lifestyle changes, and I've found that across the world, many of them use what I call a medical model or an expert script. This is a very straightforward model where the patient or client comes to the appointment, the expert diagnoses the problem and provides the solution. The blue rectangle depicts the space where all this happens, which is the clean and controlled environment of the doctor's office or appointment room that does not have any of the noise, hassle, and distractions of the patient's everyday life. When this model is utilized for lifestyle counseling, it proposes that by providing reliable, often novel information, the expert will increase knowledge and awareness and change the patient's attitudes, which will then result in behavior change. It's an implicit model, meaning that many professionals are not aware of using it, and many patients also have learned to accept it without much conscious thinking. The medical model makes us see the glass half empty. It prompts us to identify the problems and seek for somebody who could fix those problems for us. That's why it's called the expert-driven model. When applied to lifestyle change and self-management of disease, it can be outright dangerous because it makes, at best, it makes us compliant, but at its worst, it makes us helpless and hopeless. So let's look at some alternative models. This is my model of teetering. It proposes that change is not straightforward, but rather teetering from some kind of awakening to trying things and maintaining if lucky, but often relapsing, and making these circles along the way, sometimes stopping completely. In teetering, serendipity plays an important role, because sometimes teetering leads to randomly finding an opportunity to do something that will lead to an experience that is evaluated based on the resulting feeling and then repeated if the feeling is positive and the opportunity arises again. The green dotty rectangle depicts an environment that is messy and noisy and full of distractions. It's the so-called real life. In this model, the underlying principles of change follow the COM-B model by Professor Susan Mickey and her colleagues. They borrowed from the criminal law, saying that you cannot convict a person unless she's had the capability, the opportunity, and the motivation to commit the crime. The same with behavior. All 3 are needed. Although the less conscious effort the behavior demands, the weaker the role of motivation and capability. When the teetering model is combined with the idea that the glass is half full, it becomes a powerful way to drive change. You start to acknowledge the strengths you have, the knowledge, the skills, experiences, already existing habits, positive feelings related to health and well-being. And you use the strengths as building blocks. When I discussed with Dr. Virga about today's topic, he said that he sees the air in the glass as your dreams. So let's use those to guide the path. I call this a strength-based approach. In the strength-based approach, you feel self-determined, capable, and full of hope. During the last couple of years, the field of positive psychology has started to accumulate research on the impact of positive affect on lifestyle change and really supported the idea that making people feel bad is not the best way to support change. This research has also unraveled some of the mechanisms of the positive affective processes that underlie change and help you to reach higher. Now let's take the second poll. So, what is your primary feeling regarding lifestyle change? Is it neutral, or is it hopeless, or is it being hopeful?
Okay, I see the answers coming in pretty quickly. Okay, let's see the results. Vicky, what do you think about the results?
Again, I think that this is very encouraging result. And for those people who feel hopeless, I really hope that you will get something out of this lecture that will give you a little bit more hope.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to continue with the presentation.
Andrew, there was somebody
Yes.
saying that there was problem with the volume. Are people experiencing that still, or?
Did anyone else have?
I didn't experience that myself, but
Okay,
I noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that the picture of my dogs didn't show to you, so and our forest in the beginning, but yeah.
But hopefully we'll hear them later on. But no, the volume for me is perfect. Sometimes things are out of focus, but other than that, I think that everything is going well.
And I think we can promise everyone that at the end we're going to return to the dogs. So
thank you.
We love the dogs.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Positive affective processes influence us in three ways. First, when we identify our strengths and get those acknowledged by ourselves and by our significant others and also our healthcare provider, it gives us voice and a feeling of being accepted and appreciated. This will increase our self-efficacy and sense of control, leading to empowerment. Second, positive thinking and focus on things that we already do leads us to find solutions which has immediate positive effect on our well-being and builds our resources for the future as well. The third one is an upward spiral. In the upward spiral, positive affect during behavior increases our unconscious motives for behavior and thereby increases engagement, which leads to the positive affect intensifying. This is what we also call a flow experience. Furthermore, the positive affect builds our vantage resources, meaning that we will, for example, become more resilient and not so easily discouraged in the face of setbacks and obstacles. For starting your own upward spiral of behavior change, it is important to pay attention to your self-talk. When thinking of your lifestyle behaviors and things that you already do, does your internal voice put you down? Or does it help you to increase your motivation and feelings of self-efficacy by showing genuine acceptance, finding more reasons why the things you are doing are so great, and helping you with ways to take them even further? The great because and structure is a simple and excellent tool to train your self-talk and also the way you respond to others when you want to support their change. Let me show you how it works. Thinking of some of the healthy things I've done, I'm recalling that I did go to the gym twice in March and it felt rather good afterwards. But then the lockdown started and I just had to stop. First, hear my critical voice responding. Well, it's great you got yourself to the gym, but it does not help you much now, does it? How do you think the critical voice makes me feel? Discouraged and low in self-efficacy. In fact, I start to doubt I will manage to go to the gym anymore once it opens again. Another failure experience. Then hear my accepting voice. Well, that's great, because it shows you really want to train, and now your body has a bit of experience on how it feels too, and it feels good. That's a great starting point. And while you cannot go to the gym, what are some alternative ways you could get the same feeling at home? Did you hear the difference? The accepting voice with the simple structure is such a great way to boost self-efficacy and motivation. This is the essence of the strength-based approach to lifestyle change. Let's take a closer look at the idea that even the smallest changes count and can add up to important benefits to your health and well-being. We already talked about the 4 different types of change. When thinking of lifestyle change, people so often start by apologizing the things they are doing and adding that they know they should stop, but. The strength-based approach encourages you to stop only one thing, and that's the apologizing. Forget about the unhealthy bad behaviors for a moment and instead focus on the good behaviors. Identify those and start doing more of them. It's way easier because you already have experience of those behaviors. You also already have capabilities, opportunities, and motivation for doing them. Now you just do a little more of them. And as a side effect, usually the good starts to replace the bad. Not instantly, but soon enough. I want to show you a concrete example of an easy way to use your existing healthy behaviors as building blocks, based on B.J. Fogg's behavior grid. I bet most of you have eaten an apple at least a couple of times during your lifetime, and that you really liked it. But if not, no worries. Think of another fruit or vegetable that you like. Let's call these apple-eating occasions as dots. I'm also quite sure that there have been times in your life when you've eaten an apple or the other favorite fruit you are thinking of, say, at least 5 days in a row. Let's call that a span. However, I'm pretty sure that there are not many of you who would eat an apple every single day of your life. That would be a path. Identifying your dots and creating spans and parts out of them is a very powerful, easy way to make changes. It might not be the sexiest way of making changes. Some might say it's an extremely boring way, but I think sometimes boring is good, especially if it is effective. Principles of habit formation are a useful tool for helping you to create the spans and paths so that lifestyle change becomes automatic and effortless and sticks with you. Habit forms when an action is triggered repeatedly in a specific setting sufficiently often to create an association between the setting and the action. Often there is a reward for the action, which can be almost any positive physical or emotional response. The setting entails a stable context. where a trigger for the action always emerges. The context could be a physical or social situation or a sequence of actions. The trigger can be any recurring feature in the setting. The more often this chain takes place, the stronger the association until the action becomes automatic and the reward becomes redundant. Let me give a practical example from my own life. A couple of years ago, I had gone through an ear operation which influenced my balance, so I decided to start improving it by standing on one foot. So that was the action I started to make habitual. I'm very conscientious in brushing my teeth every morning and every night in my bathroom, so that was my context. I had just bought myself an electronic brush that gave me a signal every 30 seconds so that I brush for full 2 minutes each time. So the toothbrush was my trigger to lift my knee up as high as I could, and the signal was the sign to change from one foot to the other. I started practicing, and in 2 weeks I had created a habit which became automatic very, very quickly. I never have to think about lifting the foot, although I do think of how high my knee will stay. If I'm very tired or sick, it stays lower, but even then the habit sticks. My immediate reward was feeling happy about how I could take double benefit of the time I spent brushing my teeth and how easy and effortless the whole thing was. Now, you might say that this is nonsense. It's nothing. But think about it. 2 minutes every morning and 2 minutes every night means 4 minutes per day and 28 minutes per week, more than 1,400 minutes and 24 hours per year. And all extra without any effort. On top of it, I realized that the low back pains I had been suffering from had almost entirely disappeared after the first year. However, because habit automaticity requires a stable context and trigger, it can disappear as easily as it developed. This I realized when I traveled. In a hotel room with the regular toothbrush, all of a sudden my knee did not lift itself up. So I had to start traveling with the electronic brush. Sometimes it's necessary to break old habits, but it's better not to think of it as the primary way of change, as it is much more demanding than creating new habits. First, you have to identify the setting and the trigger causing the action that you want to get rid of. To break the chain, most of us will try to resist the trigger. However, this requires a lot of willpower, and willpower is vulnerable. So let's put this strategy into brackets. Another and a better way is to utilize the habit formation principles and think about a better alternative for the action. For example, craving for sweets during the afternoon coffee break might be a sign of low blood glucose. A sandwich might actually be a really effective replacement for chocolate, as it will bring a more long-lasting feeling of satiety, which is the reward in this chain. So instead of trying to stop eating chocolate, start eating a sandwich. If you still need chocolate, take it, but I'm pretty sure that your servings of chocolate will get smaller, and on many days you find that you won't even need it. The third way to break a habit is to change the context so that the trigger stops emerging, and so will the action as well. Many big life changes will bring about habit changes that seem surprisingly easy. Often this is because the underlying chains of context-specific trigger, action, and reward are not there anymore. I doubt that many of us would make major life changes thinking that it would help changing habits, but when these life changes happen, it's a good opportunity to think about what kinds of new habits you want to create. Perhaps the easiest way to break a habit is to modify the environment in small ways. For example, get rid of TV remote control if you want to get up from the couch more often. Leave the serving dishes in the kitchen if you want to stop taking second servings. In this way, you can nudge yourself to healthier behaviors. Often, it's useful to think carefully about what you want to change and the reasons behind it, because that will help you find the ways that best fit with what is important to you. So some of you might be thinking that maybe you should spend less time on your screen. That's a common thing many of us feel guilty about. So I'd ask, what makes you think so? Maybe it's because you think you spend too much time sitting on the couch. Maybe it's because you are afraid that you are neglecting your family members. Maybe you think spending time with your friends is not nice anymore when everyone is interacting more with their screen than each other. Maybe you have problems falling asleep in the night. There are so many possible reasons, and each have different implications for choosing how to go about the change. So what could you do about it? Instead of sticking with the initial idea of doing less, let's think of ways to plan a change that would be positive. So based on the reasons, here are some ideas of what the change could be. You see that there are many different ways, and these are just a couple of possible options. After deciding on the best way to make the change, it would be useful to revisit the habit formation principles and think about good triggers for the behaviors in your specific situation. Another way of thinking of change is to split a big problem, such as poor sleep, into many concrete and small behaviors that could help. Some of these are already formulated in such a way that there is a specific context and even a trigger. For others, you would need to think of your own situations to identify at least a trigger that would help you to remember and eventually form a habit. Let's go back to the big changes, because sometimes you want to or need to make those as well. The bigger the changes, the more they require capabilities, opportunities from a supportive environment, and motivation. The type of motivation matters. This model of controlled versus autonomous motivation comes from the self-determination theory by Ryan and Dici. The drivers of behavior are changing when you move from controlled to autonomous motivation. While you could be heavily motivated by punishment or reward, the motivation would not last unless the incentives are in place and sufficient. The more you move towards the right and the green color, the more sustainable the motivation becomes. So in that sense, autonomous motivation is better than controlled. We human beings are different in that some of us tend to seek more activities with autonomous motivation, while others rely more on controlled motivation. But more than individual differences, there are differences based on behaviors. Some behaviors we only do if there is an external must, others because we want and enjoy doing them. Also, there are situations where our behavior is heavily externally controlled by parents, teachers, coaches, bosses. But it's important to remember that to make any behavior sustainable, it is crucial to help build more autonomous motivation. A personal trainer once told me that it takes 3 years for her to help a sedentary client to develop intrinsic motivation for regular exercise at the gym, which is a big change. As a parent, when teaching my children important life skills, I started by controlling their behavior with sanctions such as you can't go out with your friends unless your room is clean, and rewards such as you will get 50 cents for emptying the dishwasher. Gradually relying more on social approval, like, wow, I was so happy when I saw that you had loaded the dishwasher, to recognizing that with all the responsibilities they were taking and showing adult behavior, I could trust them with more freedom, which they appreciated, as an instrument to other goals. to finally the day when my youngest told she had vacuumed the house because she enjoyed the house being clean. Wow, that was a big victory, but the process took quite some time. What does it take to build autonomous motivation? This is the basic psychological needs theory from the self-determination theory. These three basic psychological needs, relatedness, perceived competence or self-efficacy, and autonomy, are the foundation of autonomous motivation. So, for a behavior to be motivating in the sense of autonomous motivation, all three needs have to be met. Here are some examples of what it would mean in practice while doing it. Capability was another important factor that is needed, especially for the big change. There are, of course, all kinds of specific skills and capabilities, but I want to talk briefly about self-regulation, which is a generic capability encompassing both a personality trait and skills that can be acquired. First, it's about our ability to control reactions to impulses. Often we refer to this as willpower. This is the hot emotional part of self-regulation. Second, it's about our ability in goal-directed behavior. Here we talk about conscientiousness and perseverance. This is the cold, rational part of self-regulation. Both parts are important when making lifestyle changes. The bigger the change, the more planning and perseverance you need. The more the change means restrictions and self-discipline in the face of temptations, the more willpower and ability to control your reactions you will need. Self-regulation has been compared to a muscle. It's needed in so many things that we do. It helps in school, work, social relationships. As it's partly a trait, there's a genetic component. But you can also train it. And same as muscle, you train it by using it, gradually increasing the load. But same as muscle, it gets tired when it is used. And you can probably identify some of the factors that will also make it weaker, such as lack of sleep, stress, strong emotions, low blood glucose levels, alcohol and other substances. For anyone who has tried to make lifestyle changes, these are also familiar. When did you relapse? I bet it happened when your resources for self-regulation were compromised by one or more of these factors. My favorite example of failed self-regulation comes from the Soccer World Cup in 2006. I know that most Americans are not so keen on soccer, but for us Europeans it's a really big thing. This was the final game, and the French team captain Zinedine Zidane had announced he would retire from his professional career after winning the gold for France. So his stakes were really, really high. He was also injured during the game, so he must have been in great pain. In the final moment, an Italian opponent said something to insult him so badly that his self-regulation failed completely. And the pictures show what happened. With the famous headbutt and a red card taking Zidane off the field and Italy winning the game. Good self-regulation helps already in childhood. This is from one of our studies among school children. The study showed that those who reported higher self-regulation in both goal-directed behavior and willpower also reported eating more healthy food items and less unhealthy food items. One way to help you to train self-regulation and at the same time to make changes more likely to succeed is to use the SMART goal-setting framework. So when you plan for a change, select a goal that is specific and tells you exactly what the behavior is that you want to do, where you want to do it, and with whom. Note that goals are behaviors, not the outcomes you want to achieve, such as weight loss. Think about how you can measure your progress towards the goal in a way that is concrete, simple, and makes sense to you. Make sure your goal is achievable. If your self-efficacy is high, you can aim higher. If you can only succeed in optimal conditions, you probably need to reconsider the goal. Is your goal relevant to you? It's better to select a goal that will add something important to your life rather than take away something. Remember what we talked about negative and positive goals, and the positive affective processes that are important helpers on your journey. Finally, make sure that your goal fits with your situation and that you have a realistic timeline for it. Follow up with your progress. Here is a tool to help in goal setting and planning, as well as evaluation of the progress. This is generic, so it could be used with any type of behavior. It's useful for people who like to sort out their thoughts in writing, but you can also think about the questions without writing things down. In my example, the person feeling this is Rachel, who is 60 years old and is thinking of her eating habits, and starting with the good habits that she has. She then thinks about changes that she would like to try. Eat more regularly and increase her veggies. Building on her regular breakfast with fruit, she will add to it yogurt to get some more protein and to make it easier to follow a regular meal pattern. She will also add 1 portion of vegetables for her dinner. She also considers how to make sure that she will be able to follow her plan. What do you think? How well was Rachel able to apply the SMART goal features in her plan? Was her plan specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely? I think it was. Now let's see what she thinks about her plan and the way it went. When evaluating your progress, learning about the process is the key thing. It's not the good outcomes, but learning about why the outcomes were good or why they were not so good, that is the most important thing. Because only by learning will you be able to continue getting good outcomes, or if they were not good, adjust what you were doing. Well, Rachel did learn about the process and she also experienced good outcomes. There were some adjustments that she will make, but she seems to be quite happy and even impressed by the impact of such small changes. And she's glad that she was able to select goals that were both feasible and effective, and for having the support she needed from her family. And finally, she also describes her way forward. I want to finish this talk with some of my key messages. First, instead of thinking that knowledge and attitudes would change our behavior, it's crucial to understand that more often it's actually our behavior that changes our thinking, which will then reinforce the behavior. From this starting point, with the strength-based approach and utilizing the principles of habit formation, motivation, and self-regulation, you can start making the kinds of changes that you find important, positive, and inspiring. Changes that will take you into the direction you choose for yourself. So remember to use what you've got. Make it small, but make it many and frequent. So start with identifying your dots and then create spans and parts out of those dots. Automatize and make it a habit as much as you can. And if big is what you need, then remember the COM-B model and make sure to have the capability, the opportunities, and the right kind of motivation for your change. Thank you for sticking with me. Now, let's look into your questions.
Okay. Thank you, Pilviki.
Thank you. Do we have the last poll?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So for the last poll, I wanted to know that how many different kinds of dots can you identify quickly from your own life, and meaning sort of incidental, occasional, healthy things that you are sometimes doing and that you could start building into spans, defined periods of time, for example, during the lockdown, or even parts for the rest of your lives, maybe small behaviors on different spheres of life. So how many different kinds of dots could you identify?
So we already have almost half of our 60 participants answered, but we have answered keep flowing in. So we're going to wait a couple more seconds. Maybe it's a good time also just to remind everyone once again what the dot would be precisely.
So dot would be like, for example, occasionally leaving the car in the far end of the parking lot when you go to the supermarket, to walk a little bit more. So that would be a dot. And then a span would be like, yeah, for the next month, every time that I go there, I will park in the farthest corner and walk instead of being very close. Or it could be like I will start eating a tomato at every meal for this week or for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Okay, so we have results. Can you see this?
Okay. Yeah. 79% say at least 5, and 19% way more than 5. And there were some, maybe one, who could not identify any of those. I hope that you will be able to observe in the next couple of days your behaviors and think a little bit more carefully about things that might be your dots. There's somebody who says, it's Marcia Harris, great presentation, thank you. Self-regulation is what I do with teaching dogs, but never thought about it in terms of my life. Okay, yeah, I can identify with that. I also actually learned quite a bit about human behavior when I got my first dog, Peppy, 11 years ago. So observing her helped
I
me.
promised you we're going to go back to the dogs.
Okay, so there they are. Yeah, Peppy is 11 years, and Nilo, he's going to be 1 year in the end of the month.
Thank you very much, AJ, for showing them. And I had the pleasure to see them live. So, I mean, through the video conferencing, actually. So, very lively. So, so we have the opportunity to ask Dr. Absetz some questions. So, any of you would like to engage in questions and comments, ideas, share your own strategies, how to change? And when you're mastering your courage, I could make some tie-ins to our previous webinars. And Dr. Absetz mentioned what we tell ourselves about change is very important. And for example, we might have engaged in some healthy behaviors before the lockdown, but now we cannot do them. And so that was this, what we call one of the yes butting, right? Yes, but. And Dr. Absetz wonderfully described that it is healthier for us to say yes because and, right? And if you go to our webinar number 7, we talked about semantics of change and how certain words can kill our semantics, can kill our motivations. And these were very common motivation killers, like I have to, I should, I must, I can't, and things like that. So and yes, butting was also part of that, those motivation killers. So thank you very much for pointing that out. And another thing that also ties into our beautifully with our philosophy, actually, of all our webinars, is when you are setting up goals, you are setting goals for your own behavior. Not, for example, so that I will be eating more fruits and vegetables, that I will reduce portions, or I will crowd out my high calorie, low nutrient foods with high nutrient, low calorie foods, right? And so these are behaviors that I can control. I'm not putting an outcome like losing weight, because this outcome may come in later. And we were talking from the very beginning about engaging in this process, but without attachment to the outcome, because this attachment to the outcome is going to undermine the process. So non-attachment to the outcome. It is, so I care, I do, I am engaged and motivated and committed, but not attached to the outcome. So that's very important. So thank you very much for really following the philosophy of our program. So
Satish here is saying that I wanted to start a new behavior in the evening after I finish my work. Tried reading novels, going for a walk, etc. Nothing became a habit. What is wrong with me? First of all, Satish, nothing is wrong with you. No, nothing is wrong with you. Habit principles say that if you want to make something habitual, then you think about the context and the trigger for that. So you have to select the context, which is something that you always find yourself in. So whether it's the physical or a social situation or a sequence of different actions. So for you, it would be, is it after I finish my work? Is it when you come home, or is it something else that you always do in the sequence of coming home, that you decide, okay, this is where I want to put the new behavior? And then what is your trigger that will help you remember, that will be your cue to action there. And if you have selected, you want to have the novel, then okay, so then you stick with the reading of the novel, and then you practice that action in that setting with the cue that you have decided, and you practice until that becomes habitual. And if you do that every day in 2 weeks, that will happen. But if you try this one day and that the other day, they will not become habitual. Yeah, habit formation is about repeating things. And then, of course, in our modern way of life, we are sort of somehow programmed to think that we have to have a lot of variability in our life. So we have to do different things all the time, and we have to eat different foods, and it's boring if we do the same. But habit formation says that do the same in the same situation. Yeah. Of course, maybe you don't want to read a novel every day when you come from. That's not the only thing in your life. But so then maybe you select after you see that the reading of the novel starts to go really well, then you can add another to another day with another context and another cue. So, for example, my cue to action after work, if you are at the office, is I take my sort of gym gear with me, and then I build a habit out of that, going to the gym immediately. So I would suggest you think carefully about your the behaviors and the context and the triggers, the cues to action, and forget the wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you.
We have two questions in the Q&A line.
And there is somebody who says early morning exercise seems to be a mood elevator that leads to other changes. That's an excellent point, that if you can identify something that will also help. And that's using the positive process is one way of that. So,
yeah, and the morning is really great because that is when our particularly for me and my wife Alexandra, here you can see her too. Hello. So it is much easier to schedule something first thing in the morning, because otherwise our schedules, we are both physicians, and the longer the day, the more unpredictable things are happening. So really scheduling gym in the morning or physical workout in the morning turned out to be the easiest way to make it stick and to become part of our regular schedule.
Yeah, and that's also another thing, that it's good to program things to the morning. Like, again, like if you program a really healthy breakfast with a lot of food on your plate, and nuts and seeds and whatever, then you can think that, okay, I've had already sort of half of my daily fruit and vegetables in the morning, and that will give you a little bit more sort of way to relax the rest of the day and make you feel good and easier to stick to your meal pattern. Michelle says, I tend to say it doesn't matter anyway when I go back to a bad behavior. My willpower is not very strong because I can't find a good motivation. Any suggestions? First of all, I want to remind the looking at the good behaviors and increasing those. So what are the good behaviors that you can do? And then seeing if focus on that will help you to get the process of changes started and give you more strength. So I would not start have the bad behaviors as the first things. And as I said in my presentation, often the bad behaviors as a side effect, they become less frequent when you focus on increasing the good. Then if there really is a need to reduce the bad behaviors, and you say that your willpower is not very strong, then I would suggest you think about the situations where your bad behaviors are triggered, and think about what happens in that situation that triggers the bad behavior, and then think about the breaking habit principles that I also talked about. So is there it seems like you are mostly relying on your willpower, but which I said in the presentation, people usually tend to do, but that's the hardest way of doing things. As you say, it takes a lot of motivation. So if you can think about other behaviors that you can attach to the same cue to replace the bad behavior there, then that will be easier than just relying on willpower. And then the others that I also talked about is to modify the context so that the cue to the bad behavior doesn't happen, or avoid the context completely if that's possible. It's easier for me to change my behavior when I'm alone with no triggers, but when I'm in stressful work environments, my behavior goes back. Yeah. Do I need to learn how to be in more stressful situation to learn how to change my behavior? Again, here I think that there are that it's helpful to think about change as increasing the good behaviors. I think that this again deals with reducing the bad behaviors, because you are trying to sort of get rid of a behavior. My behavior goes back. And I think that it's a shift in your mindset to sort of forget about the need to stop the bad behaviors and try to focus on identify the good behaviors that you already have, at least occasionally. Those are the dots. And try to increase those. What are the things that I can do more? Because you already have the skills for those. You already have at least some opportunities for those. You already have at least some motivation because you have done those things already occasionally. Now you just do more and more often.
And I think that is a very important point that you just made, Dr. Absetz, that a lot of our focus on bad behavior is actually reinforcing bad behavior, because that is what's our mind, and our mind doesn't process, don't do this. It only sees do this. It is like, don't think about pink elephants. Actually, we are increasing craving.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, that's the don't think about the white bear thing. If you say tell yourself, then that's the only thing that you can think about. Yeah. So that is so we can only think. Our brain really works much better if we are framing it in what we do want. Thank you very much.
So we have a question from Facebook that Alexandra Ola wanted to ask, but we think there's something with our audio. So this is technology, don't be worried, Ola. If it can break, it's gonna break. So the question is there any period of time to teach your brain a new habit, a number of repetitions? How many times an activity has to be repeated to learn this as a habit?
Okay, so that depends on how difficult it is and how often you find yourself in the context where the trigger or the cue to the action emerges. So if it's much more difficult to teach yourself a habit of going to the gym than it is to teach your knee to get up when you brush your teeth. Those are two very different behaviors in terms of how much they demand from you. Yeah, but you can train a habit of taking your gym bag with you when you leave from home. That's much easier thing as a habit to teach yourself. If you always have the bag ready by your door, then it's easy for you to form a habit of taking that with you, and that will make it easier for you to go to the gym after your work, after you finish your work, for example. But so there is research on how how much you have to practice, but it says that with easy behaviors it can happen already in a couple of weeks, but I recall sort of an average maybe 6 weeks or something, but depends heavily on the behavior and how often you are in the situation where the trigger for action emerges. And the good thing about habit formation is that even if you lapse, then the behavior, but the habit automaticity comes back if you start practicing again. So never mind if you lapse, you just come back and start practicing again. Yeah. And then one thing that I really want to also emphasize, like based on the sort of the comments or the questions that were there, and I was detecting a little bit of hopelessness in some of those questions, is that there is no such thing as failure if you learn something about the things that you have tried, and that's why it's very important to also reflect on the process, the things that you were trying to do, and what happened when you were trying to do those, because then you will learn about how it went and whether if you had the opportunities, if the environment was supportive enough for you, and if you had the capabilities, and what else was going on there, because yeah, failure is failure only if you don't learn anything.
And thank you very much. That is exactly another word that we consider motivation killers in healthy semantics. We talked about it in webinar 7. That failure is really a result that we didn't want.
Yeah.
And if you want a different result, that is important for us to act differently, and really looking back. And Natasha made a great comment. I notice when I revert to a behavior I'm trying to change, and I am able to give myself compassion by acknowledging how difficult it can be to make lasting changes, I'm able to more easily refocus on the positive changes I have made, rather than staying stuck in the negativity that comes with the undesirable behavior. So self-compassion. Over time, I have noticed that this attitude of self-compassion helps me leverage my positive behaviors. It is a very great comment, very important. That yes, we are all work in progress. So acknowledging that that it is being compassionate to yourself. Thank you, Natasha.
Yeah, excellent comments here. And the Mitch says, my mother always used to say, get started, then get motivated. Yeah, exactly. That's the sort of behavior leads to doing, changes, thinking.
Yeah, so that also leads to really, in modern times, we don't think that motivation precedes behavior as much as it is, because don't wait until you will get motivated or you will feel like doing something. Start doing it, and then you may start learning how to feel about doing something.
Yeah.
So. I saw my Alexander Wergach, you made some comments earlier, but I missed them.
There is somebody asking about using the lecture as a handout for patients. Yeah, and I'm sure that that's possible, and also I think that this lecture is going to be available in your site with the webinars, so you can refer your patients join.
So yeah, so on our
to
website,
listen, because this is going to be the recorded lecture is going to be there.
yes. So so for all of you, we have all the recorded lectures, the information about the series, as well as the link to the recorded lectures is on the link that I'm trying to share. By mistake, I sent it. So I just sent it to everyone in chat. The link to the webinars, and yes, this recording is going to be available around Thursday or so. So yeah. And so I can share something with you. It's a little family secret. Since the lockdown, our house turned into a chocolate factory because we yeah, it is. So because my middle daughter and her husband is in lockdown with us, and they have a chocolate manufacturing company. And through the lockdown, they got many orders.
Okay, wow.
Then so we have plenty of chocolate.
Okay.
And actually, part of family time that we do is chocolate tasting. But again, these are vegan chocolates. There are 70 or more % cocoa, so it is not like a typical chocolate that you can eat a lot of it. So really, they are very they have very strong taste, and really, it is not like you will eat huge amount. Plus, they are naturally sourced from. So that is also a fair trade and everything. So they are not all chocolate is bad. So.
No, and yeah, in lay terms, it seemed that perfectionism can be a motivation killer. Exactly, Mitch Ryder said that, and yeah, so yeah, I think that's exactly what it is, and yeah, no reason to apologize. The chocolate in the house.
There's more and more of it.
So can I have a comment and a question?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to say that thank you for this, and probably the one thing that was really important for me to discover in life, and with myself as being maybe a little bit entropic in the situations, is I was really focusing on goals and setting up goals. And when I discovered that habits are so much important than goals, and when I started leaving habits over goals and thinking just quickly what I want to achieve, but then the next thought that follows is what kind of habits I need to achieve this, because otherwise it's going to be just my fantasy, not reality, and I want to live in reality sometimes. So thank you for this. It's an exciting subject. And my question would be, but where do the habits actually come from? So like, why do we form habits? The best
Why do we
answer
form habits? Okay, so I think that's the sort of I think it's an evolutionary thing also to help us save energy, because we are otherwise we would be completely overwhelmed by life, because there are so many things that we have to do the whole time. And someone has said that an adult faces 35,000 sort of decision points during one day, and of course only a tiny little bit of those can be deliberated, consciously thought about. Most of it has to be automatic, otherwise we would not be able to cope. So it saves us, our brain, from having to process everything.
Is it the answer to a need? Is it always answer to a need, to a repetitive need? So for example, my body needs something that it triggers. For example, I'm back from work. I need to rest. This is a need. So I can respond in, go and watch Netflix or go and read novel. Or is the habit
so in that case, you mean that you have an internal sort of cue to action? It's your internal state or bodily state that triggers that action. Is that what you mean? Or
I'm just curious from the maybe science standpoint.
Some habits are probably because of our biology, but many habits are because of the environment and the social cues also that happen. So there are all kinds of habits, and I think that in the first slide that Marius showed with the escalator, also the industry is very effective in creating unhealthy habits in people and providing those cues to action.
So why the healthy habits are so hard to form while those bad ones are so easy to form? So what would be the difference?
Often it's a lot about the environmental triggers, the cues to action. So if you live in a so-called obesogenic environment, it's full of cues to action, to unhealthy behaviors. But then there is also the biology, which also Marius discussed in the first slide, that our bodies are tuned to get more pleasure from sweet and fat and so those also help.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to also say something about habits. Really, if we are still alive, that means that most of our habits are healthy, right? So we tend to think that it is all bad, right?
Yeah.
But if we are still alive in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, that means that most of our habits are healthy.
Yeah.
And so yes, so we are getting up in the morning, and then starting with appreciation, and Mitch rather talked about perfectionism being a motivation killer, and actually tomorrow in Polish and next week in English we are going to have the lecture on and the presentation on perfectionism and how it is driving us to do unhealthy things, and how actually perfectionism is driving us to feelings of inferiority, and how those two things are feeding of each other. And so a very important thing that most of our habits keep us alive. Of course, that with some fine tuning, we may have more muscle, we may have less fat, we may have a lower cholesterol and better glucose curve. But in general, if we are still alive, that means most of our habits kept us alive. So in big terms. Now, what we are talking today, it is not because most of you viewers have bad habits. No, all of you who came here today are actually showing that you are motivated to do something about it and see the importance of it. So I truly believe that all of you who tuned in and still are tuned in are really champions already. So you're winners. So and all the rest that did not tune in, but they are still alive. So
So this webinar would be a dot. So we really encourage to build it into streaks, right?
Yeah, and like if sort of thanking yourself is a dot, you sometimes do it. Make it a span, do it every day next week. Thank you for yourselves from something, and then continue as a path, or identify a positive thing that you have done for your well-being or for your health, or both, every day, and make that a span or a path. And those are tiny little things. Like I work a lot with professionals, like I said, and I train professionals to do lifestyle counseling, and I remember when in the training they I asked about their healthy eating habits, the professionals, and they said that, well, I have a balanced diet, and okay, that's nice, but it wasn't very concrete. But then when I ask patients about their positive things about their eating and healthy things, and then they start to really say that, well, when I eat slowly, and I chew what I eat really well, or I ate porridge in the morning. That's a very Finnish thing, but it's like a very fiber-rich thing. Or that I like apples. So very, very small, but very concrete things. They don't talk about the nutrients. The professionals talk about the nutrients and balanced in that way. So try to be very concrete about the good things that you are doing, and identify, pay attention. It's a sort of like a mindfulness thing, and the appreciation towards yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 I'm Janice, and I'm not very good on the computer. My sister, Marsha Wertheimer, got me interested. I think you are absolutely fantastic. My life has changed very drastically over 4 years, almost 4 years. My husband passed away in October 2016, and this was the first time I ever lived by myself. I had never been on my own. I went from my parents' house to my husband's house, and then I'm on my own. And I have had to learn so many different things, and I am dealing with a lot of physical things, and I know what I have to do. I know the goal I want to set. But the problem is I haven't been able to get the habits done the way I want it. I've been sleeping a lot. One of my physical problems is I have IBS, and which I was diagnosed when I was very young. Now I am 80 years old, and this has really changed my life, because if I have to go, I have to go very quickly, and it comes very fast, and it's very hard. It takes time to clean it up, and this has. I don't play tennis. I haven't walked because I'm afraid to do that. My daughter's a health coach, and I have been working with somebody to fix this, to find the root and how I can work on it. And I've been doing protocols. I'm still going on, and I also have mold in my house, and I have to clear that up. And I have a house. I'm a snowbird, and I live in Buffalo, New York. But right now I am in Florida, and I am staying here until it is safe to fly back home. And I might not even go back home. So I have learned an awful lot of things. I've learned a lot from your class. I have learned a lot from functional medicine, and it is really helping me. I know I'm a very strong person. I know when I have to make, if I have a problem, I look for a solution. And the things that I've been doing now is I've been learning an awful lot, and it's put me off from doing some things that I really should be doing. And I'm working on all these different things at once. And sometimes there comes a time where I have to stop. But I'm actually, at this point in time, I'm very grateful for, I really, how should I put it? I am just grateful for who I am. I love myself, and I have an awful lot of love to give to everybody. And this is what I want to do. And I'm doing a lot of different steps to reach my ultimate goal. I shouldn't say my ultimate goal, but I have to get all my files done. I'm kind of a perfectionist. And but I've learned, I've had a lot of psychiatric help, which has helped me, but I haven't done this in quite a long time. I haven't done this since my husband passed away. The therapist I had was no longer doing it. So, but I know I'm a good person, and I don't beat myself up. I do have a big problem of sleeping. I've never really gone to bed real early. When my husband was alive, I had better habits of going to sleep. But being alone, I have to be the person that tells me what to do. And I keep working on it. But like today, I didn't wake up till 1 o'clock. I was up late last night because I was on looking for some information on the internet. And it was information that I was interested in. And that's been my problem. So that's why a lot of times I'll go to bed late. But even if I go to bed, I want to start going to bed around 11 o'clock. I want to start getting up early in the morning. But I have a terrible time in the morning getting up. I ring my alarms. I have 2 alarms. I ring them, and then I say, I can't get up. And then I want to go back to bed. I don't want to do this. I am trying to work on this. I do have a sleep summit, but I haven't had time to listen to it at this time. And I'm gathering this information so that I will have it. And what do you think I should be doing at this time? Do you think I'm working in a good way?
I think it sounds like you have a very strong will, and you have a lot of things, sort of a lot of building blocks. Yes. That you are trying to put together.
Yes.
And a strong motivation to do those things, and a lot of appreciation for yourself, which are all really, really, really important and great things. And I think that for the sort of next steps for you, you might want to, I don't know, think about small ways of doing things and focusing on maybe 1 or 2 things, and start to build on those so that you don't have to focus on too many things at the same time, because that can be quite challenging. But thank you very much for sharing your experience, Janice. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
maybe
just-
Marius wants to add something
Yeah.
to.
Thank you very much. So, Janice, that is very important. Thank you very much for sharing and being so open with us, and for joining us in your kind words. So yes, so this, I think that Vicky mentioned that your kindness towards yourself is going to be critical, because so the kindness and compassion and caring and tenderness, really.
I love people. I really
Yeah, but
do.
to yourself.
No,
So
no, do.
There
I
are-
love. That's how I can give. Because, and you know something, I feel that I only deal with wonderful people. People have been so wonderful to me that it makes me so happy. And I just believe that people are the most important thing in this world. And we're not things, that we're people. But I feel that that's the most important thing. And we have to look, and I want to make people happy. And I'm not very good at words. I really try.
That's a great attitude there that you have, Janice, and I hope that there were more people like you who really want to, well, who care for others and have that attitude in life. Can we thank
okay,
you?
let me just make one more comment. Just let me one more comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
But just that one comment for Janice. I think that that focusing on the most important person in your life, who is you, and one behavior that you already emphasize is important is sleep. So in our notes in the group, we are going to, and the notes that you are going to receive like midweek from our webinar is going to be a handout on sleep, which is 3 pages. I wrote it. It is so boring that it's going to put you to sleep in the middle of the day if necessary, right? So everybody's going to get it. Please don't read it if you are not in your bed, right? Because it's so bad. So, and so that I hope it's going to be helpful. Also, I wanted to comment on Ken, who made a great comment that dots are like a photo snapshots. The spans are like a film takes, and the path is like the whole movie. Thank you, Ken. That is a really great, great thing. But Alexandra, you wanted to say something.
Yes, finally you can hear me. Good evening, everyone. I've got a question from Facebook to Dr. Pilvike. If you would like to change your life and decide to give up some bad habits, do you recommend to fill the gap with a new healthy habit? Is it important to replace the habit that a person decided to give up, or can you learn a new habit without replacing the gap? In terms of like technical structure, what would you suggest for a person who would like to give up a few bad habits? Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's easier if you replace it with something, and also it's important to think about the reward that you get. Like if you get the reward that you get from a bad habit. So, for example, if it's
let's say we would like to cut off the sugar level, of the sugar level. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so oftentimes the craving for sweets is when you actually are hungry, but you don't recognize that, and you don't recognize that early enough. So then the reward from the sweet is the satiety, feeling of satiety, and then it would be important to replace that for eating something healthier, and maybe scheduling that also before you start craving for the sweet. So something like that I would suggest, or if it's a bad habit that you do with your friends, for example, smoking or drinking alcohol, then it's what you get from the sort of social approval that you get. That's your reward. You have to get that from some other place. Or if it's from smoking, that you feel anxious and you need to have some release, then a stress relieving technique might be very helpful. But you need to think of what the reward for the bad habit is, and whether you need to make sure that you get that the same thing from something else.
Thank you so much for your answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone mentioned a former teacher that giving the dots are like giving kids stickers for good behavior. That is a great comment. Thank you, Marsha.
Yeah, and I think that that's one important thing that teachers are nowadays more and more doing. When I was a kid, teachers were mainly looking at the failure, like the mistakes and the red marks. And nowadays, what I see more and more is that they really use the strength-based approach, helping children to identify their strengths and building on those. And that's a really, really big change in our school system.
So I was thinking about, because we usually conclude with giving people a homework assignment. So I was thinking about actually rewarding oneself as for good behavior. So regardless of the behavior that you want to change, what type of dots you may have for yourself for rewarding, so developing a habit of rewarding yourself and looking at your own strengths. What would be the sticker for you? That is a question to all of you, and you may put your comments in the chat. What do you think, Pavlik?
Yeah, I think it would be really, really useful to start with identifying your dots. At least if it's very difficult for you to identify a dot, a good behavior, a positive behavior, then take that as your first assignment, to try and identify at least one. And then if it's already easy for you to identify those, then try to think of ways to make, select one or two dots and try to make a plan on how to make that into a span using the habit formation principles, because I think that there are people have different, are in a different place with regard to this. So for some it's easy to find the dots and start increasing those, and for others it's more difficult to even to identify those. So I think that would be a good suggestion from Marius.
So are there any tools, any digital tools, applications, or maybe other tools that you would recommend to work on the habits, to work on the dots, on the stickers?
Sorry?
So the question is, are there any tools, like applications or
resources
that we can share, that we can to help people to facilitate this process?
Yeah, we can have, by midweek, we can have a resource for that.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. There was also Terry Richards, who says that she's been recently studying self-talk and mini habits and have had more success with working towards positive changes in habits and not just trying to stop the negatives. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and there's, yeah.
Mariusz, I was thinking, is our working with vital activities a little bit like finding these positive, happy things, joyful things, and then doing more of this? Is it the similar approach?
That is very similar approach. Actually, that was our first assignment in the series. It was to engage in activities that bring you joy. And joy is different than pleasure. So joy is always in synchrony with your physiology, so that does not harm you. It is with your values, with your morals, with your life philosophy, with your relationships. So yes, and that in this way, such activities may be self-reinforcing by the joy that you experience. But even when we talk about these activities, the life is making them habits are not. It's not as easy as one might think. So yes, thank you for bringing that up, because it is an important part of what we do. But at the same time, engaging in the activities that bring us joy. Oh, hello. So that is one of the activities that bring us joy, is hanging out with our pets, our four-legged family members. Thank you. And so yeah, so joyful activities on one hand may give us energy to engage in other activities, because it's very, very hard to implement healthy lifestyle if we are deprived on other levels. So fulfilling is important first. So it's much easier to eat healthy when you're not very, very hungry or upset or so. Yeah, and Mitch says comparing oneself to others can also interfere with motivation. Yeah, Roosevelt said that comparison is a thief of all joy. So when I'm comparing myself, I'm really robbing myself of all joy that I may have from that particular activity. Thank you, Mitch. All right. So thank you very much, Pilviki. That was such a wonderful presentation, and your presence with us, and the time with all of us and our participants. Thank you very much. It is such highly appreciated that you, in your busy time, you volunteered your time here with us, and this. So we had this world expert volunteering her time and spending time in preparation for this, and us discussing that ahead of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. I have enjoyed preparing the lecture for you, and also attending and joining this session, and discussing, and with your really great questions and excellent examples that you had, and really have a lovely week, everybody, and enjoy your Sunday. You still have that. I'm going to go to bed now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's quite late over there in Finland.
Is quite late. It's my bedtime. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we will share the resources in midweek. Thank you very much, Andrew,
okay.
both Alexandras. Thank you, and everybody else who participated.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye-bye.
Good
Good
day.
night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.